Hello, my name is Joerg Dressler. I'm an artist living in Provincetown, Massachusetts. I was born and raised in Germany, and I immigrated to the States in 1996. And I'm an artist. I'm a painter. We're here in my studio where you can see my work. My work is focused a lot on the relationship that we have as human beings with nature. And what I mean by that is that we do need nature. We need to be in nature. Psychologists even describe modern society suffering from a nature appreciation deficit. If you just think about going for a long walk in the woods or on the beach, your state of mind is probably much, much better after the walk than it was before the walk. A friend of mine wrote something about my work that I want to read to you because I think it really perfectly describes what I'm after. And I was very happy when I first read this. He writes, his works are meditations on nature. They challenge our perception of it, evoke the mystery and the majesty of it, all while honoring the fragility of its beauty. And I think there's so much in this that is important to me. I'm really interested in the mysteries of nature and especially the duality of nature. Like a forest, for example, can be very enchanting, but at the same time, when it gets dark, it can be very scary. I think that duality is something that I'm really intrigued by. Depicting that and getting that sense of ambiguity and the hybridity of that feeling is something that I strive to show in my work. So as a painter, it is really important for me in my studio practice to challenge myself and push my own boundaries. I think it's important for me to constantly evolve, trying to get better at what I'm doing. And the current body of work that you can see here, I'm exploring basically the two-dimensional idea of painting in combination with 3D. So for me right now, simple cutout of the paint surface that I do before I even start the painting, and then combining it with levels of pattern right behind it, it breaks the two-dimensional surface, and even though it's still a painting, it taps a little bit into the idea of sculpture to combine my love for traditional landscape painting and still life painting, but also my fascination with minimalist art from the 60s, patterns, in this case, almost kind of like labyrinth-like patterns that draw you in. And what it does, it allows me to be kind of like two kinds of painters. I myself sometimes feel like I kind of like embody this hybridity. I'm neither German nor American. I'm somewhat in between. And I think it shows in the work, and it's probably the reason why I'm so interested in these kind of like fine lines between one thing or the other thing. My journey as a painter started basically as a kid. My parents were very supportive by buying us painting materials, and they always encouraged us to be creative. When I think back, I was mostly spending my time either building something, painting something, drawing something, and I got a huge boost in interest when I was about 13 years old, and my stepfather and my mother brought me to Paris, and they exposed me there to a lot of museum visits. I saw the Impressionists, the French Impressionists, but I also saw 1500s landscape painting, French mostly. After the museum visit, I usually was allowed to pick a book. I bought a book, and then when we got back home, I would draw a paint from the books. So in a way, I taught myself a lot, but ultimately I went to art school where I learned a lot more about art and how we perceive art and what the meaning of art is. My work as a painter, for me nowadays, it's just a way of living. I start my day by going for a long walk in nature, so that's kind of like how I set myself and prepare myself for the day. And while I'm walking, I'm observing I'm looking at the plants, I'm looking at the leaves. It's in a way a form of study what's out in nature. So even when I'm not in the studio, there's a lot of thinking that goes into the work. So for me, it really has become a lifestyle. It's my everyday action, thinking, everything that I'm doing evolves around my practice as a painter. Well, inspiration to me is not something that just happens all of a sudden when you go in the studio and you have this brilliant idea. For me, it can be either being in nature and literally investigating how a certain flower or a certain plant is growing and how it's structured. It can be photography. I have a background as a graphic designer, so graphic design is a big influence in my work, which you probably can tell and see. There's a lot of experimentation, a lot of research that goes into it, and ultimately, I think I can only do the work by constantly thinking about it. And then there's artists from all kinds of areas. There's Claude Lorrain, which, as I mentioned earlier, 1500s French landscape painting, the Impressionists to a degree. But then there are also people like Warhol, pop art. So in the current work, I'm looking a lot of Dutch still life painters and landscape painters. There are tons of them to look at. And what I'm doing before I even start a painting is I'm going into a sketching phase. And the sketching phase consists of me collecting paintings, still lives of old masters, combined with my own photography. And then I go into Photoshop and I collage more or less what I envision as the piece. The reason for the piece is always somehow founded in a personal story, which is not necessarily coming across and is not important for me to convey to the viewer. But it's important for me to have that story as a guide in order to come up with the right composition, the right elements of a piece, basically an internal way of expressing my state of mind. I sometimes refer to it in a way as a visual diary. Well, the hardest part for me to work in general in my work is when I get to my own limitations and not to be intimidated by my own limitations. Quite the opposite, to just take them, embrace them, and sometimes overcoming them, working with them. I think that's really what's important, to embrace all that, because only that is who I am, what I'm capable of. So the work therefore has integrity, and I think that's really important for me as a painter, to create work that is really me and that has integrity, and not trying to be something that I'm not.